All right, everybody, it's 8 o'clock. Let us begin. I am absolutely delighted that we're doing this tonight. These webinars are always really amazing. So I always like to start with a prayer of gratitude. Thank you to the Mother of the Universe for your presence at this healing session, for your love and compassion for everyone present. Thank you to all the forms and expressions of that great overarching intelligence, which are none other than the fine impulses of our own consciousness. Thank you to the ancestors of everyone present today for their abiding love and constant support of our evolution. And thank you to the presence of God, to the being in everyone in this healing webinar, for blessing the session and allowing us to concisely isolate the core of everyone's concerns and address that in the highest and best possible way. And as we're doing so, of course, to empower everyone who's in this session to master their own healing process, to become more self-sufficient and more self-sustaining and more comfortable practicing self-transformation through consciousness within themselves. Thank you, everyone. All right. So the theme of tonight's webinar, beyond simply weight management, is looking into establishing healthy habits. The reason I say this is because the difference between a person who's maintaining a very healthy, fit body, which is a normal weight, and a person who's not having success in that area has to do with the habits that they sustain, people sustain in the long term from one day to the next, to the next, to the next. And we all know that from one day to the next, there will be variations and changes. But the important thing is the overall effect of the habits, the cumulative effect is the most important principle. So we're going to talk about habits tonight. But before we do that, I've got these notes. I did want to talk about two things. One is just to set a ground for what we're doing. One is the element of sustainable weight management, which, as I mentioned already, is basically based on habits. And the second part is the definition of energy work. So in my understanding of many years now of doing energy work, energy healing, energy work, light work, whatever you want to call it, this is the intelligent application or direction of attention in order to produce specific effects within one's own self at varying levels of refinement, to produce specific effects at varying levels of density. So the principle here is that awareness folding in on itself goes into some deeper level and adjustments are made inside the being. And these adjustments cause a shift in the way the physical part of the life or body or relationships manifest. That's energy work in a nutshell. All right. So with regards to habits, they're kind of like two areas. One area is the habits themselves. And I know, because I've seen the list of people that are in on tonight's webinar, that you are all adults and you basically know what you should be doing. You know if you eat something that you should not have eaten. And you know if you eat a little bit too much and your tummy feels yucky because it's overly full. And you know if you got to bed too late and were completely exhausted and woke up tired the next morning or whatever. You know if you went through a whole day sitting down and didn't get any exercise. So I don't feel that my job is to tell you the right way to be or to act. I feel that you know that, but I would like to cover just a few little points that you may or may not have thought of so that we're all on the same page and give you some information that can be like tools for you to help cultivate habits that make more sense to you. So the three areas are rest, activity, and eating. So part of this has to do with timing. Our bodies belong to this ancient tradition of life forms on Earth, which have cultivated an alignment with natural forces, the movements of the sun and moon, and the rotation of the Earth and the seasons over millennia. Therefore, we can utilize the intelligence in our physiologies to support our decisions and our intentions with regards to behavior. So one of the principles is that aligning sleep patterns with circadian rhythms allows the sleep that we take and the rest that we take to be of maximum value to the physiology. Therefore, it is recommended to go to bed before 10 o'clock. It's ideal to get in bed around 9:30 or so and be asleep before 10, if you can. It's ideal to wake up in the morning before 6 o'clock because in the early hours between 2 and 6, energy is lively. And if one awakens at that time, one carries a kind of lively energy through the day. And if one awakens after 6, we move into a kind of a heavier period of time, 6 to 10, and one can carry more of a heaviness or a grogginess through the day. For the same reason, exercise in the morning between 6 and 10 balances or counteracts that heavy, sluggish energy that sits in the physiology between 6 and 10. Also, taking a big meal at noon. All these points I'm giving you, most of you know, come from Ayurveda. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. But those are valuable. There are a few other points that you may or may not have thought of. And I want you to know that some of this comes from the fact that for several years I was enjoying dancing, taking dance classes, and my dance teacher was able to maintain an exquisite physiology, very brilliant physiology, very beautiful muscle tone and no excess fat and absolutely lovely. So it was my joy to observe her habits, and they included stopping taking food in the evening after 6 o'clock at night. She didn't eat after 6 or 6:30, so that when she did get into the bed, her body was empty and it wasn't busy digesting a heavy meal. But I think when I look at how she lived, and has been a joy to adopt a lot of these, so I thank her very much for sharing with me. One of them was an activity-centered life rather than a diet-centered life. That when the intention of life and thoughts and feelings and decisions and so are kind of continuously centered around, first my first meal of the day, and then my little snack that I have in mid-morning, and then my lunch that I'm going to have, and how am I going to prepare, and getting all that together. And then when that's over, that's nice little nap after lunch, and then that big snack in the afternoon, and the coffee, and then followed by a big dinner. And then, of course, there's always the snack before bed. By the time if life centers around what am I going to eat next, it ends up a lot of eating takes place. Whereas what I notice with people who tend to not have as much weight is that not a lot of thought or time or energy goes into what am I going to eat next. but that the focus of life is on what am I going to do next? And a lot of energy and excitement and importance is given to the activities of the day rather than the eating of the day. So even if eating occurs, it's not a big important thing. It's just, it happens, it kind of has to happen in order to stay alive, but that's it. So anyway, I offer that because it's a good principle which allows an individual to be very progressive and accomplish good things, and it can be a lot of fun. The other thing I noticed, and of course not everyone has the autonomy to get in 2 exercise periods in the day, but that first exercise period from 6 to 10 were really solid exercise, a good hour or so of just, cardio and stretching and muscle building. And then the afternoon, some lighter exercise. In the mid-afternoon, some go to the park with the children or take a swim or a bike ride or something out in the garden, something like that. So I realize not everybody can do that. All right, enough with habits. I'm not telling you have to do that anyway. The other point on habits, though, which is really important, is how do we cultivate habits? Some of the things that I've mentioned, you're thinking, wow, it's not exactly what I'm doing. The question is, how do I move from where I am to where I want to be? This is where the energy work comes in. Habits sit in the physiology at a level of biomemory. Our cells remember, our organs remember, our tissues are remembering. And the memories that sit in the tissues and in the physiology, the impressions that go along with those memories are not so material. They're not solid. They're made of consciousness, basically. And we know that consciousness is malleable. And to extend a little bit the principle behind the energy work itself, I talked about the importance of attention. That attention focuses in on a particular area and has this ability of activating or enlivening that area. The thing is that one of the laws of nature of consciousness is that consciousness is ever constantly sort of folding in on itself and reflecting itself. It does these 2 things. It folds in and it reflects, and it folds in and it echoes, and it folds in and it reflects like that. These loops of consciousness flow between all areas. They flow between my hairs, and they flow between the heart and the mind, and they flow between the dense physical level of the physiology and the very, very abstract, subtle levels of the physiology. It's an endless flow of loops of consciousness folding back on themselves, and as that happens, reality manifests as a result of those loops. But if the loops become corrupted, then what manifests is not necessarily evolutionary. To eradicate the corruption, attention moves into the area where the imbalance is. Attention is a tool. Attention moves between the physical and the non-physical. It's like at the gap between manifest and non-manifest. That's why sometimes if somebody puts their attention on you, you notice. Even if they're behind you and you can't see them, you can feel somebody's looking at me. And when you turn around, you see somebody's looking at you. Or you think about somebody that you really would like to talk to, and then the phone rings and it's them. Or you go to the store and you bump into them. So attention is not only between physical and non-physical, but it is an extremely high vibration structure. You can think of pure awareness, pure attention, pure perception is being. It is that unmanifest, unbounded infinity, which is capable of being directed with intention. So we move our attention with intention, and the attention is divine. It is divine light. So as attention moves into an area that's out of balance or corrupted, as I mentioned the word before, then the nature of attention is that it spontaneously hums or vibrates at a very, very high frequency. And when it goes into the area that's not working or functioning properly, it brings that high, high frequency in. And then the area that's like a lower frequency, that's maybe associated with fear or some other discordant feeling, is met. It meets, these two meet with each other, and the attention acts like a tuning fork. And it brings that area that was humming at an irregular frequency, or at a frequency which you could say is out of harmony or out of tune with one's essential true nature. It brings it up so that everything's harmonizing together, everything's humming at the highest possible frequency. If you are a very religious person, you can think in terms of that highest frequency as the light of God, and whatever in the being is not aligned with the will of God then comes into alignment. We do it ourselves. I'm looking into the group to see if there's anything that needs to be modified or adjusted, if there's any way we can bring greater value to this process or understanding. A lot of people have energy stuck here in the throat area. I'm seeing self-doubt and feelings of, oh, well, that sounds so simple, but I can't believe it can be done, or I'm not sure how to do it. There's a question of, yeah, but what happens when you bring your attention and that doesn't happen? What if it doesn't happen? And then a key question, which is, what if my intention is off its mark? That's a really good question. I don't know who thought that, but somebody in the group was thinking, what if my intention isn't quite able to direct the attention properly, right? If the attention by its nature is a beautiful, sweet, high vibration thing, great, but what about intention? I love that question. I think I want to move with that one. By the way, any imbalances, when I'm looking into the group and seeing a little imbalance here or there, any imbalances right away, attention goes into those imbalanced areas, and as it does so, it creates balance. So this, as we're going along here, I want everyone to know that part of the work that's taking place tonight is being expressed by me through words, and a great deal of work is also taking place which is outside the range of my ability to describe every detail of that. But sending my attention to just gently nudge or remind everyone's celestial and causal bodies, which it feels like pretty much everybody is online with this, to be awakened and in their full value, so that maximum healing is taking place for everyone during the session. So beautiful and so good. Everybody's God presence is receiving a download, or a sort of a flow of energy, of divine energy. And that is causing a nice integration at the celestial and causal level of the physiology. So there is a harmonious coordination between your God presence, which is the part of the being responsible for running your show, basically, and the celestial and causal levels of the physiology, which are the very finest levels of the manifested being. You know, there's the unmanifest being, infinite, unbounded, unmanifest, and then there are these very, very fine levels. And it's the very, very fine levels where we have our greatest potential and energy is harnessed to produce specific effects at the manifest level of creation. So I'm just seeing a really exquisite alignment and integration within the structure of everybody's energy field. Okay, so we talk about intention. Right, and of course, intention is something that flows as a byproduct of various internal motivations. The motivation to be exquisitely healthy and to be completely, utterly comfortable in your physiology and to live a life which is of great value to yourself and to the world is a great place to start. Everyone has the right to feel exquisitely comfortable in their bodies and to feel beautiful. Thank you. We're getting some support right now from the field. This point about beauty, sometimes beauty has been looked upon as superfluous. Beauty has been looked upon as an accessory or not absolutely necessary to fulfill the life's goal, which is total union with divine being. The life's goal, total awakening and expansion of consciousness, absolute mastery over the manifesting process. There's a realignment of intention. So what I'm seeing is that, of course, everyone has a choice to direct their intention from any level of the field of their being. If we direct the intention from the level of the heart, we may end up performing an action which is service-based. If we direct intention from the level of the mind, we may perform an action which is intelligence-based. If we direct intention from the level of the physiology, we may perform an action which is action-based. Dance. I'm getting a download about intention. May it also be going to everyone else in the group. Intention, which originates with one's highest goals, with one's vision of the highest potential, has the ability to activate all levels of the physiology simultaneously. So it is from that level that our intention to produce a body of exquisite health and beauty and aesthetic proportion and power can then activate the entire range of the manifested condition of the self. So I'm just watching that happen. It was at the live stream last weekend that a modification or shift occurred, like a healing occurred in the matrix of creation. Hoping to get that segment up online really soon. But it was based upon the opening in the matrix of life, the life matrix. Some people call it crystal matrix, but it means this system of channels of the flow of consciousness, which connect everything in creation to everything else in creation. This opening that occurred was based upon aesthetics. It was based upon beauty. And that surprised me at first because I wasn't expecting it. But what I understood about it was that modifying or adjusting relationships, proportions, resonances in the being to accommodate or align with certain universal principles of aesthetic beauty allows consciousness to flow more openly, more powerfully. It allows greater integration. And this goes not only for the matrix of life, but also for the physiology as well. So beauty is not superfluous. Beauty has a purpose. The purpose of beauty is to allow for integration of abstract principles of relationship and proportion to the practical functions of mastering the manifesting process, of integrating absolute divine being into every level of creation. It makes sense, doesn't it? That everything gets included. So things like the Fibonacci series and the golden ratio and principles like that. And the body naturally contains those relationships. But when the body is carrying a lot of excess tissue, then it loses some of its relationship with that. So the intention, this is the whole thing I just said, was coming out in order to clear away or cleanse away the illusion that I don't need to be beautiful in order to live my life well, or I don't need to be well proportioned in order to reach my life's goal. Actually, at some point in the process, when we get down to a fine enough level, proportion is important. Just checking. It looks like I've got beautiful. For some reason, Zoom has got a new system, a new setup, and I have got 2 question and answer boxes, which I didn't used to have. So I'm just noticing. So I've got them both open now at the moment, in case people come in either on the chat or in the question answer box. I think I'm doing the right thing. Okay. All right. So let's go back and see where the rubber meets the road with this and connect how we can use our intention to apply to the field of habits. We want to look at habits. The first thing is that a lot of the habits that keep the body coated with excess weight or tissue are based on fear. In so many cases, the fat is shielding. And in so many cases, the fat cells contain the grief or sadness or loss or feelings of being not good enough or not loving oneself, that when absorbed or metabolized by the physiology, result in those feelings flooding back in, and one has to deal with them, and that's not fun. So everybody is getting a couple of different things. The first thing we're getting is an upgrade. I wasn't expecting this. Haven't seen this. Is a new one, everybody. An upgrade for the liver and the kidneys. Evidently, some processing of the neuropeptides associated with feelings of worthlessness or lack of self-love, etc., can take place in these organs effectively. So effectively. Excuse me, something's happening in the circulatory system as well. Some of it can also take place in the circulatory system. I know there's a really intimate relationship anyway between the liver, kidneys, and circulatory because, of course, those 2 organs are the cleaners or cleansers of, okay, I just had to move my leg a little bit, of the blood. And the blood is the flow of bliss or happiness in the body. So the first thing that I'm seeing happening is an activation of celestial body energies, which are working with the circulatory system to increase to increase the level of bliss in the body. And at the same time that's happening, the causal body is being upgraded to produce energy medicines for you, which create deep, deep satisfaction and comfort and feelings of just lusciousness in the body. These medicines are specifically for the physical body as it interfaces with one's own sense of self. So it's like, think of it like love made of light, that the causal body is learning right now, everybody's causal body, to make these medicines which make you feel exquisitely wonderful. They're soothing and they're comforting and they're satisfying, and they bring feelings of great physical well-being into the body, everybody's causal body. The celestial body functions or energies which are interfacing with the circulatory system are not only increasing bliss in the circulatory system, but they're also gaining discrimination. Something very interesting that's just recently started happening is this activation that just started at the beginning, remember, of our session, where the God presence was getting a kind of alignment or an activation of the celestial and causal levels of the physiology. These areas, the celestial causal level of physiology, can make these little loops of consciousness that are folding back on themselves and literally structures one's own evolution. In other words, the celestial body can heal itself as it kind of loops up to the causal body and then back down again. These are really fine little loops that are happening at a very, very delicate level of consciousness. But the upshot of it, the result, is a continuous, sustained perpetuation of evolution and healing at a very fine level of consciousness. And everybody's receiving that. And I'm just asking, because I know some of you in the daily sessions got some of that. I'm asking if this can extend, if it's possible for it to extend in any way to past lives or ancestors, or I should say the distant past or ancestors. Looks like your distant past. Looks like your present self is able to take this activation at the celestial and causal level and offer it like a gift to your own self in the past, as far back and as completely and thoroughly as possible. Thank you very much. God presences are receiving a download, are receiving a support for this process. And it is also affecting the field. And I'm also understanding at this moment that this activation, which includes the celestial level of the being capable of like totally nurturing itself and perpetuating its own evolution in a very effective and powerful way, and then the celestial body medicines that create deep, deep comfort and satisfaction and ease in the physiology, are themselves forms of exquisite beauty, which are going back through the creation and are softening the density that was sitting in the collective consciousness of our earth, of our sweet earth, for times past, in centuries past, many centuries. Some people are going back thousands of centuries. We can go back thousands of centuries. This is how powerful your celestial body is. This is how powerful your being is. It can travel these lower These more abstract levels of the physiology are completely unbound by space-time, and moving through time is merely a matter of moving attention through time. But it is expanding the healing that took place in the matrix of life last weekend through time. You are doing this. Very powerful work, everybody. Very exquisite. If you feel like a sweet, beautiful, angelic being when you're doing this, there is good reason for that, because you are functioning as an angel. This is the work that angels do. This is what they do, and you are doing that, and it's because you are an angel. Because we're all angels. We're angels in our physical form. So what I'm seeing is, as we all know, there's a great field of expression of consciousness, a great expanded field that expands beyond what we think of as our physical form, beyond what we think of as our individuality here at the celestial causal level. And for some reason, what we did created this really big activation in that field, and many intelligences awakened simultaneously, and were like really celebrating what just happened. Created a big activation in the field of creation, and created waves upon infinite waves of joy, rippling out and out and out through the whole cosmic reality, and into dimensions, primarily into dimensions which are not known, not three-dimensional dimensions, multi-dimensions. And that celebration is still going. And offerings are being made back to us from these deeper dimensions of our own self. Now remember, everything that's happening is really yourself interacting with you. I am your reflection. I am your mirror. It is my huge honor to be that to you, for you. The joy of service. This celebration of the brilliance of celestial level, the body folding back onto itself to produce its own evolutionary effects, and that moving out into the field of life through this life matrix, and then coming back in and going back and forth like that, is stabilizing the bliss that was flowing through the circulatory system. Essentially, our circulatory systems are holding a great responsibility, because everything is carried, the movement through the body, the movement of intelligence, the movement of oxygen, the movement of much of the changes, many of the changes that take place in the physiology are overseen by the circulatory system, including a lot of the physical healing. For example, moving the toxins out of the cells, bringing healing energies to the nervous system. A lot of the healing is in the hands of the circulatory system. And what I'm seeing is that the joy that was activated in the circulatory system, and remember also metabolizing the fat, all that energy, the fat breaks down and it becomes oxygen and carbon, basically, and then all that gets carried through the circulatory system. The joy and the happiness which is activating in the circulatory system, it is upgrading the intelligence which is responsible for the circulatory system. It is making the intelligence more intelligent. So what this means is, on a dense level, it means a more intelligent circulatory system. But on a subtler level, it also means greater overall intelligence in the physiology, which will affect all the systems. And I was asking about the integration of it. Yes, it's like this. If you learn a good lesson, you always have that lesson. From that point on, you always have that lesson. This is one of those processes that the circulatory system is getting this big upgrade. Beautiful. Well done, everyone. Now, the circulatory system was just part of the picture here, right? We were talking about intention and habits and so forth. So let's go back and see what we can do with regards. Also, if anybody happens to be feeling, as I am, these very huge waves of gratitude flowing from the past, from the ancestors, from the field of life, which has itself undergone an upgrade and a healing, then allow that flow of gratitude to move through you back to the divine, back to the source of all creation. Because as it does so, it multiplies out to infinity. And the gratitude's like love. It's only fun if you give it away. So just allowing that gratitude to flow back to infinity and back, and so that what's happening is multiple loops. The intelligence in the circulatory system became more intelligent, but then all this gratitude came in, and that adds to, and the loops of gratitude, because it's coming into us, it's coming out of us, it's flowing back and forth. Good job, everybody. All right. I'm asking now, I would like to look again more at habits, because I realize that one of the things that holds back the ability to simply shift a habit over from a habit which is not life-supporting to a habit which is life-supporting requires certain tools. I wanted to share some tools with everyone to do this. One of them is attention. We already talked about attention. One has to decide that it's worth it. I want to do this, it's important. And because you're here, it shows that you care enough that you want to do this. The next thing is we are always self-speaking. Remember earlier I mentioned about the throat here? This is our source, is the source of communication. It's also not only source of verbal communication, because sound is produced in the throat, but also anything we do with our hands, any kind of creating things or making music, or any ways that we use our hands to produce any goods, also kind of comes out from this area of the physiology. But it's also one of the seats of self-communication, and it's very intimately linked to the heart, which is also a seat of self-communication. I am seeing that some people have placed the energy structure of their heart in a location, an energetic location, which is not highly supportive of greatest expression of self-love. So we need to relocate. On the dense level of creation, if you want to cook, you go to the kitchen. If you want to sleep, you go to the bedroom. On the subtle level of creation, there are also locations which are better suited for certain activities than others. And to get from one to the other, one does not need to walk. one only invokes. Again, attention. We bring attention. All the locations, all the subtle realms of creation exist, and they're all constantly there. They're all constantly humming in their resonance for whatever is their best source, their best function. But we need to locate ourselves. And you can literally do this. You can literally locate your physiology, your body. Oh, more new information coming in. I didn't know this. Your brilliant God presences are showing me. There is a location ideal for producing ideal weight. Well, sure there is. I should have known that. Intuitively, I suppose I did. There is a location where the laws of nature govern the process of maintaining an exquisitely healthy body. Everyone is receiving a download for the energy signature of that location. These locations exist on the causal and celestial levels of creation. So that download is coming in for everybody. And I'm taking a read off of it as it comes in so I can help describe verbally for those who can gain value from that description. The first thing I'm seeing is, and this surprises me, it's not very serious. This is not a heavy place. This is not a place that takes itself too seriously. This is a place that's fun. It's just having fun. That's the first thing. The energy here is very, very light. It's very buoyant. And nothing is really very serious. Nothing. Not exercise, not sleep. All those silly habits we talked about at the beginning of this session. None of it's serious. None of it's serious. Nothing is so important. No food is so important. No experience with one's own self is so important that it's worth feeling bad over. What I'm finding in this energy structure of this location is that it disallows an individual to feel bad or heavy or dramatic or upset, very upset about anything. Oh, I'm so grateful to see this. I'm so grateful to have this. So my question is, to your beautiful God presences that have brought the energy signature of this exquisite location. My question is, can we stabilize our being with this location? Can we move through life carrying this energy signature of this very light, very comfortable space with us, always? Fear is coming up. I'm feeling it. Some people are feeling a little bit of, no, I don't know if I like it. Right here, they don't like it. And the don't like it is about, well, what if I don't take things seriously enough? Like, I might not be able to accomplish things. I might not be driven. I might not be driven anymore. I'm getting information from the Mother of Creation. How does that work? Mother of Creation, this highest intelligence of creation, because you asked the question, I didn't know. Highest intelligence is saying that all the values which support evolution harmonize with each other. Therefore, one can carry the energy signature of this location always You can bathe in it. You can drape yourself in it. You can move in it wherever you move, whether you're at the store, whether you're at work, whether you're at school, whether you're at home. You're always in that space, whether you're in your dream state, whether you're in your waking state. And at the same time, one can cultivate whatever qualities are necessary for evolution, because all this aligns with our highest evolution. All this aligns with union with the divine. Nothing to fear. So the fear is clearing, the illusion is clearing. For those of you who are experiencing that, oh, I'm not sure that's really necessarily the best. This is also biomemory, and it's clearing from the ancestors, and we're going back about 7 generations, 8 generations, 9 generations. Oh, something just opened up, and now we're going way back. So I'm just watching that little energy fluctuation there as we're going way back in time with the generations. Evidently, this idea, this concept, this illusion, that if I am not dreadfully serious, nothing will be accomplished and life will just fall apart. That illusion has been carried for a long time. It's clearing from the entire collective consciousness of mankind. We're doing it through ancestral work. If we go back enough generations, we're all related. So, and it's not even that far. It's like within the AD period. If we go back about 1700 years, where everybody who's alive today of European descent is related to everybody who was alive in Europe and who bore offspring. You don't have to go back that far even. So this illusion is clearing. I'm going to report to you from where it is clearing. Is it clearing from layers of the physiology? For some people, it sits in the causal body. Is it clearing from, but not mostly, is it clearing from upper chakras? Upper chakras, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Oh, I never noticed 13 and 14 before. Thank you again to everyone's God presence for showing. They get more and more subtle. It's like overtones, right? That if you look at the distance between the first chakra and the second chakra into the third, fourth, fifth, they get closer together. And as they get up here, they get closer and closer and closer together. So up here, we're not looking at big distances. And again, like overtones, the human ear hears between about 16 cycles per second, 16 hertz to about 2600 hertz. And, the overtone series, if I sing a tone, ah, there's another ah, there's another one, ah, and then ah, 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 ah. And so the overtones get closer and closer together, but there's a point where they go beyond the capability of the human ear to hear, and we move into the field of light. And the chakras are a little bit like that. They go up, and then it just moves into a whole nother phase. So we can call them, some of them maybe chakras, maybe some of them just light. Just the light of being is up there. It gets more and more abstract and subtle as it goes up. Again, clearing. So many people, billions. I'm just watching that energy shift. And that. Clearing the seriousness brings up a really important point. And that is, remember back, I was telling you my dance teacher had a lot of good habits, kept her body in exquisite condition. One of my biggest curiosities was, how did she deal with stress? Because we all know that stress can be one of the biggest influences on eating. I didn't like the way she dealt with stress. I could copy a lot of things she was doing. I could stop eating at 6 o'clock. I could have a big exercise period in the morning and a smaller one in the afternoon. I could go to bed on time. But I couldn't bring myself to deal with stress the way she did. She kept herself in this space, in this energetic field that we have adapted, that we have found, that we have located around us by using the people in her world as repositories for whatever discord she was feeling. And I didn't really feel like that was a very good way to deal with that. Being one of the people in her environment, it wasn't working for me karmically. So the most important thing we have to look at tonight is, how do we deal with stress? Over and above everything, we need to evolve, develop, or adapt a means of handling stress which disallows the reaction to eat. The light in this field will help you, because it's not taking anything seriously. Even, for example, and this was something important I wanted to say tonight, so let's think about this from a practical point of view. If you say cultivate a particular habit, maybe some of the points that I brought up earlier, you can think to yourself, well, you know what? I could increase how much water I drink during the day. That should be pretty easy for me. That's not taking anything away, right? I can drink more water. If you drink more water, this will help aid your weight normalization process. So you think, okay, I'm going to drink more water. I can do it. So you start drinking more water, and 2, 3, 4 days, and 5 days, 6 days, 7 days. And then pretty soon you think, I could adapt another habit a little bit. Maybe let's add in intermittent fasting. Maybe I could, stop eating at a certain time and don't start again till kapha time the next day, till 10 o'clock the next day. If I stop at 6 o'clock at night and I don't eat again till 10 the next day, I think I can do, as long as between 10 in the morning and 6 at night I can eat anything I want. That should be pretty easy to add. So we add that in. Then the next thing we notice is, I think I'm not drinking very much water anymore. It can happen that as we're kind of working with the modification and the balancing of habits, that it's not going to be like this. It's not like that. Nature doesn't work that way. Everything has to modify and bend together as we shift and change our habits. So the ability to sustainably maintain ideal weight requires changing a number of different habits and doing so in a way that we don't lose the previous ones that we've worked on. What that means is we have to be really light about the way we treat ourselves. And sometimes when we're changing a habit, it can cause something like, maybe I'd gotten myself in the habit of not eating any sugar. That's a nice one. And then something happens, the holidays. Maybe the holidays happen, or something happens and that thing falls away. And the net result is that the numbers go up on the scale. The thing is that we are looking for lifetime sustainable balancing of habits, which may continue to change for as long as you live. We think of habit as a permanent set thing, but the reality is it's really kind of the overall effect of a cumulative effect of the way we act and deal with ourselves on a day-to-day basis. So it's more important. This is the key point. It's more important that one is extremely self-nurturing, self-loving, self-validating, self-blessing, self-acknowledging than it is that one is bound into a certain behavioral pattern, because behavioral patterns literally change all the time. But when we can adore whatever it is that we're doing, then the overall cumulative effect of the behavior is supportive of the maximum benefit to the physiology, the maximum effects at a superficial level. Thank you. We have a question. This lady is saying, usually what happens to me is that I make one decision to eat one sweet thing and then everything crumbles. Oh boy, I'm glad you asked that. It's just one bad decision that everything depends upon. I know, right? And that seems so unfair, right? Because here we're discipline. And, when one is on that diet train, one seems like constantly disciplining or something. One sweet thing, and then I'm back in the addiction, and it can happen at any time. Gosh, I'm so glad you asked this question. It's a really powerful one. Okay. So this referencing a course that I took on physiology at our local university, that sugar is literally more addictive than cocaine. Sugar is addictive. It is a chemical, and it doesn't actually benefit the body the way we eat it in our modern society. Back in the day, in the springtime, or the summer or something, people might find some berries and eat them, and they might be a little bit sweet, But in our modern day, the way we've sort of isolated the sugar out, like this chemical that goes in lots of foods, and if it's got the corn syrup in it, it's really not good for you. So we know that. So the first step is to stick with as healthy sugars as possible, because the more processed a sugar is, the more addictive it is. So that's one thing. If we're feeling like, oh, I really want something sweet, that's the first thing. The more natural the sugar is, the more it's combined or chelated, I think is the word, but more it's like integrated with other materials, like a little fiber and a little bit of other flavors. And so the better it is for you, roughage. The second thing is, and this was a study that I read in that class on rats, that if the rats were given the sugar on an empty stomach, they became addicted much more quickly than if they had eaten some kind of healthy food beforehand. Think of the way alcohol works in the body. As adults, we're taught that if you want to drink something, it's good to, and remember, sugar is it acts a lot like alcohol in the body. It's like that. Think of it as a toxin like alcohol. That if you have eaten something that's a little bit denser for the physiology to metabolize, particularly a protein, then when the sugar comes in, it won't be as attacking on the body or damaging on the body. So you won't have as powerful an addictive effect from that one bite of sugar if you have taken something healthy first. So if you can possibly do that, that's good. And I'm going to talk in just a second about how we can organize ourselves to do that. Another point is, and I come from a family with diabetes, so I know what it's like to have reactions, really pretty intense reactions to sugar. If you have sugar and the body kind of goes out of whack, it all falls down like, oh, I'm not having sugar. Oh, I've been a whole month without sugar. And then the holidays come and I think, well, I'm just going to have a little bit of sugar. And then I have that little bit, it's like, oh, I'm going to have more sugar. And it's just like all of a sudden a lot of sugar, a lot of sweets, and a lot of other foods too along with that are probably not that great. What I found is it's easier for the physiology to wean off of it. And the weaning process is something that you can also learn to do and can also develop like a skill. You develop like a skill, the ability to wean off the sugar. And it means the next day you eat a little bit less than you did the day before. And then the next day a little bit less. And it's more important that you continue eating a little bit of sugar each day and wean off gently then attempt to go cold turkey, which will create stress in the physiology. It will strain the physiology and can actually backlash. There's another point here, and this is without getting too serious, is really important. And that is, sometimes if the body has been deprived of something like sugar that it wants for a long time, it literally is trying to reset itself by taking in some sugar. So if you have 2 or 3 days where you're eating a little bit more foods that you think aren't necessarily your goal foods, they aren't your ideal foods, rather than being very hard on oneself and feeling like, oh, I'm so horrible and I'm not able to discipline myself and I'm blowing it, don't think that. It is entirely possible that your leptin levels are resetting. It is entirely possible. I just went through that for a few days. I've been off sugar now again for 2 days, but with the holidays, it was a little tricky. And today I didn't want to eat anything. And I thought, oh, that's why I had those 2 or 3 days of eating that sugar, because my body was trying to reset its sensitivity and its leptin production. And it's not the leptin production, because the leptin's produced in the fat cells. So as long as you've got fat cells, you've got plenty of leptin rolling around in your body. By the way, for those who don't know, leptin is a hormone, which is the thin hormone. It makes you not crave foods, and it makes you have a lot of energy, and it allows you to metabolize fat really well. But women especially tend to be insensitive to leptin. And sometimes if the leptin sensitivity starts to get to be too much, then the body will start to want a little bit of sugar. And you may have a day or 2 or even 3 where you're eating a little bit more than the usual of that. And it's because your body is resetting, and it's a gift. And it's really important to take it lightly and not be mad at yourself when that happens, because you are literally helping yourself lose weight by eating sugar. So there. So habits. If you know it's happening, and you know that you're going to have a tendency to kind of move off in the wrong direction with something, because it's like you know yourself and you know how you tend to react to stuff, then what you do is you plan ahead. You set yourself up ahead to succeed. So for example, you're in bed and you know that yesterday you ate sugar, and you know that today you're probably going to eat more sugar, or you're probably going to eat something you shouldn't eat. Then what you do is you plan, you go, okay, when I go to the kitchen, what am I going to eat first before I eat the sugar? Plan it out, figure out what you're going to eat first. Well, I think I'll have some almond milk with some protein powder in it, and that'll give me a big thick dose. I used to make those big shakers, but I found that's a lot of heavy stuff to metabolize. I can use a fraction the amount of almond milk with the same amount of protein powder. So I'm still getting all that protein, and I don't have to put so much stuff in my body, and then my body feels lighter and it's easier to digest and it's more comfortable. And it becomes kind of a little thicker. It's more like a treat. Little stevia sweetens it up, little cinnamon. There are lots of things that taste sweet, like cinnamon, but that are actually really good for you when you are on the weight loss track. So if I plan ahead that I'm going to have that first, and that tastes sweet and it's like a treat, then after I've had that, then I'm like, well, now do I still want sugar? If you still want sugar, you should let yourself have what you want, but what you will find is you will eat far less. You will eat far less sugar by doing that. And it will be much, much easier to wean yourself back off again, and you will have reset your leptin levels. Success on every level. The other thing is, if you are aiming to not eat any sugar, that substituting oils or good yummy fats, nut butters and stuff, is a really nice substitute and can create the same sense of satisfaction in the body as sweets or carbs. And if you're able to stay down on your carbs, the fat doesn't actually cling to the body. It becomes fuel. The body can be tricked. This is this whole principle behind the Atkins diet, the keto diet, and all that. The body can be it can get into the habit of burning fat for fuel instead of carbohydrates for fuel. So when carbohydrate levels are low and the fat levels can be a little bit higher, so the satisfaction can come from cream and nut butters and yummy things like that, one doesn't really crave sugars. If you get the body into a state where it's burning fat as fuel rather than carbs, one really doesn't crave sweets. But that does take a little bit of doing, and it doesn't necessarily produce weight loss right at the beginning. Has been my experience. 4 months on the keto diet, didn't lose any weight at all. It was when I started using energy work to support the weight loss process and it was when I discovered, and this I covered in previous weight loss webinars, the principle of cultivating the fire of digestion by having long periods of emptiness. When the body is empty of food, the body feels light and clear and strong, and it becomes very sensitive. One becomes very, very sensitive to subtle impulses of consciousness, energies, and so forth. When the body has a lot of food in it, it becomes dense and dull and heavy, and so much of the life force is being used to digest the food that life force isn't available to enhance refined perception. So, and it doesn't mean that it's bad to have food in the tummy. It's good to go back and forth, of course. I'm not an advocate of anorexia or anything like that, but there are huge benefits to the time when the stomach is empty. There are huge blessings that come from that time. Think of the body like the temple of God, and think of the fire in the digestion like the fire in the middle of the temple. And when you feed the fire, the digestive fires become strong. That Agni, it fuels intelligence. It's a powerful tool. It aligns you with your own inner strengths. It aligns you with your power as an individual. And we all know that there's also a power in the ability to manifest the body exactly as one intends. So that was the last point that I want to cover before we finish up here. And that has to do with the value of deciding from a conscious level. Everyone in this group deserves to be empowered to consciously decide how they want to look and how they want to feel and how they want to be. And the body is your trusted servant who only wants to help you fulfill your desires. The body is not the enemy. The body is trying to help you. But the desires have to be quite clear. And it's one thing on a superficial level to say, well, I want to be thin. I want to be, so why isn't my body going with it? But the thing is that if the thinking up at a more dense level, the physiology is, I want to be thin, but down at some deeper level is, I'm afraid of being really sexually attractive because I don't want to attract too much of that kind of attraction from people in my environment, attention from people in my environment, or I don't want to make women jealous of me, or I don't want to, any kind of little blockages, emotional blockages in there. Then there's a part of you that's saying, I don't want to be thin. So the deal is, you want every single level, both the more conscious levels of the mind to agree that I want to be thin, but also the deeper, more abstract levels of the mind and the feeling and the heart. We want the heart to feel that way too, like you think, well, I want to be thin and I deserve to be thin. But somewhere in the heart, there's a feeling, well, I don't deserve what I want because I don't like myself, or I'm not deserving, or I'm not worthy, or I'm a bad person, or whatever. So it has to go all the way through. So in order to allow the desire to go from the very deepest level of the being to the most manifest, dense level of the being, you can use the power of your conscious mind to create an intention. So you can communicate to yourself through pictures, through visualizations. I don't recommend doing it to the point of strain. And I definitely recommend perspective with this, that this isn't the be all and end all, but it is absolutely a tool for communicating with the physiology and aligning the body with the conscious mind so that there is no fighting, but all coordination and harmonious teamwork. And that is picturing both what you tell yourself, the thoughts you think to yourself. If you find yourself thinking, oh, well, I don't deserve that, or I don't want to be, that's going to feel weird to be that pretty or something, then it's good to catch those thoughts and just know them as thoughts and know that who you are is deeper than that. Visualizing, anytime you visualize the body, you are likely, your body will try to move in the direction of that visualization. Anytime you visualize yourself eating a specific food, you are more likely to eat that food. So with regards to curbing habits of food intake, remember, we can train ourselves to love any kind of food. And you can also train yourself to digest any kind of food by visualizing. So you can picture yourself eating nice, green, crunchy, flavorful, low-carb foods and loving them. And what you'll find is when you go to the kitchen, you will tend to reach for those foods more. And you will notice that when you get into a situation where if there's binging or there's a tendency toward foods that aren't good for you, you can visualize yourself eating some like cooking going, tastes like cardboard. A lot of fast foods are basically corn-based, and almost all corn-based foods, they may come in different forms, they may be different colors, they may look different, but they kind of all taste the same. And corn swells up in the belly and makes you feel super yucky. So you can imagine yourself rejecting foods which are bad for you, and you can visualize yourself accepting foods which are good for you. Your gut loves fiber, and your brain, which requires most of a very large proportion, I wouldn't say all, 20% of the nutrients the body takes go to the brain. If you satisfy your brain will not send signals to the body that you are hungry or that you're dissatisfied. So satisfy your brain by giving it protein, healthy fats, especially omega-3, and prana, food with life force in it. Find those foods. You can learn to love them. You can create a habit of loving anything. Literally, people have learned to love smoking or all kinds of things. And I'm not trying to be a judge of those if there's anybody who smokes. I'm just saying that there are all kinds of poisonous substances that people put in their body that they've learned to love. They've trained themselves to love, and you can untrain it. Okay, everybody, I hope that was really helpful. We have come to our hour and 15 minutes. I have really enjoyed being with you today. The work we did was very powerful. Some of the changes and shifts that took place in today's session were astounding to me. And as usual, thank you for the love. As usual, our Friday evening session, thank you. I'm only a reflection, everyone. Our Friday evening session, we are laying the ground for tomorrow. So everybody will receive recordings both of today and tomorrow. And we are going to take off tomorrow where we left off today and go in even deeper areas. I'm hoping tonight's meeting had a lot of practical points. I'm hoping that I'm expecting, thinking, visualizing that tomorrow we're going to do a lot of really, really in-depth, nitty-gritty, get down and get dirty healing work and clearing a lot of the barriers to being able to move forward in this process with grace. So God bless you all. for being with me and for being my beautiful mirror. And I can't say with words how grateful I am and what a gift it is. How valuable you all are to me. Thank you so much. So, see you tomorrow. If not in person, in the ether, in the field of energy, because everything goes to everyone. I love you dearly. And I'm looking forward to continuing to be in touch and to continue to be of service to everyone. Thank you. Good night. Hope everybody can make it to bed on time.